Your attention span has been destroyed, not damaged, destroyed. In 2000, the average human could focus for 12 minutes. Today, it's 8 seconds, less than a goldfish. And here's the disturbing part: tech companies have spent billions engineering this outcome. They've weaponized neuroscience to fragment your focus and colonize your attention. You think you're distracted, but you've been hacked. And by the end of this video, I'll reveal the exact protocol that rebuilds your attention span and turns your brain into a focus machine in under 14 days. But first, you need to see what broken focus is actually costing you. Let me show you what's happening right now. You sit down to work. Within 3 minutes, you check your phone. You tell yourself it'll just be a second. 20 minutes later, you're still scrolling. You snap out of it, feel guilty, and try to refocus. But your brain can't, because every time you switch tasks, you're creating what neuroscientists call attention residue. Part of your mind is still thinking about what you just saw. You're not fully present anywhere. You're fractured across 17 different stimuli. And deep work, the kind that creates results, requires singular focus, which you no longer have. Here's what nobody tells you about distraction. It's not a willpower problem. It's a dopamine problem. Every time you check your phone, scroll social media, or switch tabs, your brain gets a hit of dopamine. That's the reward chemical. And your brain loves rewards, so it starts to crave them. It becomes addicted, not metaphorically, literally. Brain scans of people who constantly check their phones show the same neural patterns as cocaine addicts. You're not weak, you're chemically dependent on distraction, and the dependency deepens every single day. Now here's the brutal part. While you're losing focus, your potential is evaporating, because everything valuable requires sustained attention. Writing, building, creating, learning, relationships. You can't do any of these at a surface level and expect depth, but depth requires focus, and focus requires the ability to resist distraction for extended periods, which means if you can't focus, you can't build anything meaningful. You're not just distracted, you're dismantling your future one notification at a time. Let me tell you what's actually happening in your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for focus, decision-making, and self-control, is like a muscle. And just like a muscle, it gets stronger with use and weaker with neglect. Every time you give in to distraction, you're weakening it. Every time you resist and refocus, you're strengthening it. Right now, your prefrontal cortex is atrophied, not because you're lazy, because you've been living in an environment designed to keep it weak. And weak focus means weak results. Here's the shift nobody teaches you. Focus is not about eliminating distractions. It's about building the capacity to return to focus after distraction. Because distractions will always exist. Notifications, noises, thoughts. You can't control external stimuli, but you can control how quickly you notice you've been pulled away and how fast you come back. That's the skill, not perfect focus. Rapid recovery. And that skill is trainable. Now let me show you what elite performers know that you don't. They don't have superhuman focus. They have designed environments that make focus the default and distraction the exception. They've removed the friction from deep work and added friction to shallow work. Their phone is in another room. Their notifications are off. Their workspace has one purpose. They've engineered focus into their surroundings so they don't have to rely on willpower. Because willpower is finite, but environment is constant. Here's what most people do wrong. They try to focus in the same environment where they've trained themselves to be distracted. They sit at the same desk where they scroll for hours and expect their brain to suddenly switch modes. But your brain associates locations with behaviors. If you've scrolled at your desk 1,000 times, your brain expects to scroll when you sit there. That's classical conditioning. You've Pavloved yourself into distraction, and you can't override that with intention alone. You need to change the context. But here's where it gets deeper. The reason you can't focus isn't just external, it's internal. You're addicted to novelty. Your brain craves new information, new stimuli, new hits of dopamine. And modern life delivers infinite novelty at zero cost. Swipe, new image. Swipe, new video. Swipe, new outrage. Your brain is being trained to expect constant stimulation. And when you try to focus on one thing for an extended period, your brain interprets it as boredom. And it rebels. It creates discomfort. and you escape back to novelty. Here's the part that should terrify you. The longer you live like this, the worse it gets, because every time you give in to the craving for novelty, you're strengthening the neural pathway that demands it. You're literally rewiring your brain to be incapable of sustained focus. And this doesn't just affect your work, it affects everything. Your ability to be present in conversations, your ability to enjoy a meal without checking your phone, your ability to think deeply about anything. You're not just distracted at work, you're distracted from your own life. Now let me tell you what focus actually is. It's the ability to direct your attention to one thing and keep it there despite internal and external pulls. It's not natural, it's not easy, it's a cultivated skill. And just like any skill, it requires practice. But here's the problem, most people never practice it. They spend their entire lives in reactive mode, bouncing between whatever grabs their attention. They've never experienced what it feels like to hold focus for 2 hours straight, to be so absorbed in something that time disappears. And because they've never experienced it, they don't know what they're missing. Here's what deep focus feels like. You sit down with a clear intention. You start working. The first 10 minutes are hard. Your brain is restless. It wants to check something. It throws thoughts at you, but you don't engage. You notice the distraction and return to the task, again and again. And then something shifts. Around the 20-minute mark, you drop in. The resistance fades. You're no longer fighting your brain. You're flowing with it. Time compresses. 2 hours pass like 20 minutes. And when you emerge, you've created something. That's deep work. That's where all meaningful output comes from. And you can't access it without focus. But here's the trap. Most people never make it past the first 10 minutes. They feel the resistance and interpret it as a sign they're not ready, not in the right mood, not inspired enough. So they stop. They distract. They wait for motivation. But motivation doesn't create focus. Focus creates motivation. You have to push through the discomfort to get to the flow. And if you keep quitting in the first 10 minutes, you never build the capacity to go deeper. Here's the neuroscience. When you focus on one task for an extended period, your brain releases norepinephrine. That's the chemical that sharpens attention and blocks out distractions. But it takes time to build up. You can't access it in 3-minute bursts. You need sustained effort. And once it kicks in, your brain becomes a focus machine. Distractions stop registering. Your thoughts align. You enter a state of flow. But you have to earn it. And the entry fee is pushing through the initial resistance. Now here's where it gets interesting. Your ability to focus is directly tied to your ability to do nothing. Most people can't sit in silence for 5 minutes without reaching for their phone. They've lost the capacity to be bored. And boredom is essential. Because boredom is when your brain consolidates information, makes connections, and generates insights. When you fill every empty moment with stimulation, you're robbing your brain of the space it needs to process. You're consuming but never digesting. And that's why you feel mentally exhausted but never mentally clear. Here's the framework for rebuilding focus. You need 3 things: environmental control, temporal boundaries, and progressive overload. Environmental control means you design your space to support focus, remove distractions, create physical separation between work and leisure, one device for deep work, one space for focused tasks. Temporal boundaries means you define exact windows for focus. Not "I'll work for a while," but "I will focus from 9 to 11 with 0 interruptions." Progressive overload means you start small and build. You don't go from 0 focus to 2-hour deep work sessions. You start with 20 minutes, then 30, then 45. You train your attention like you train your body. Let me give you the protocol. Tomorrow morning, you're going to do a focus session. 25 minutes. One task. No phone, no tabs, no music with lyrics, just you and the work. Set a timer. And here's the key: you're not trying to produce perfect work. You're training your brain to stay with one thing. When distractions arise, you notice them and return. You're building the muscle. And every time you return to focus after a distraction, you're strengthening the pathway. Here's what happens in the first session. Your brain will fight you hard. It will tell you this is pointless, that you need to check something, that you're not in the right state, and you're going to ignore it. You're going to sit there and keep your attention on the task, even if the work is bad, even if it feels forced, Because you're not optimizing for output yet. You're optimizing for attention control. And attention control is the foundation of everything else. Now here's the secret method I promised. It's called the distraction log. Every time you feel the urge to break focus, you don't give in. But you also don't suppress it. You write it down. Urge to check phone. Thought about email. Wanted to look something up. You externalize the distraction without acting on it. This does two things. First, it removes the mental load of trying to remember or resist the thought. Second, it creates awareness of how often your brain tries to pull you away. And awareness is the first step to control. Here's what you'll discover when you do this. Your brain generates distractions constantly, but most of them aren't real needs. They're just habits. Your brain has been conditioned to seek novelty every few minutes. And when you log the urges instead of acting on them, you start to see the pattern. And once you see it, you can interrupt it. You're no longer a victim of your attention. You're the architect of it. But here's the part most people skip. You need to reward focus. Your brain responds to incentives. Right now, it's incentivized to distract because distraction delivers dopamine. But if you want to rewire it, you need to make focus rewarding. After a deep work session, you do something you enjoy. Not scroll. Something restorative. Walk, stretch, sit in silence. You're training your brain that focus leads to relief. And over time, the association strengthens. Focus becomes the pathway to calm instead of the source of agitation. Now let me tell you what happens after 2 weeks of this. Week 1 is a war. Your brain resists every session. You feel like you're failing, but you're not. You're rewiring. Week 2, something shifts. The sessions get easier. Not easy, easier. You can hold focus for longer before the pull of distraction. And by the end of week 2, you've built a new baseline. You're no longer someone who can't focus. You're someone who's learning to focus. And that identity shift changes everything. Here's the long-term truth. You will never eliminate distraction, but you can reduce its power over you. You can build the skill to notice when you've been pulled away and return immediately. You can design your environment to support depth instead of fragmentation. You can train your brain to crave focus the way it currently craves novelty. And when you do, you unlock a level of productivity and clarity that most people never experience. But here's what separates people who rebuild their focus from people who stay distracted. Consistency. One good focus session doesn't rewire your brain. 30 consecutive sessions do. You don't do this when you feel like it. You do it every single day. Same time, same setup, same commitment. And your brain stops resisting. It starts expecting. And eventually, it starts craving. The thing you once fought becomes the thing you seek. Here's the identity shift you need to make. You're not someone with a short attention span. You're someone who's been conditioned into distraction and is now reconditioning into focus. This isn't permanent. It's reversible. But reversal requires action. Intentional, repeated, disciplined action. And that action starts with one 25-minute session. Today. Not tomorrow. Today. So here's what you're going to do in the next hour. You're going to remove every distraction from your workspace. Phone in another room. Notifications off. Single tab open. And you're going to set a timer for 25 minutes. And you're going to focus on one task. When your mind wanders, you log it and return. When the timer goes off, you stop. You've just built focus. Not mastered it, but built it. And tomorrow, you do it again. And the day after. Until focus isn't something you try to do. It's something you are. Because here's the final truth. Everything you want requires focus. The career, the relationships, the clarity, the results. And focus isn't a gift. It's a decision followed by training. So stop waiting to feel focused. Start acting focused. And your brain will follow. One session at a time. One day at a time. Until you're not fighting distraction anymore. You're living in depth. And depth is where everything that matters happens. Focus like a machine. Not because you have to. Because you decided to. And that decision changes everything.